national champions come to watch you play from your school. But we have a special bond with all of our players, and that bond is never going to be broken. And just seeing them is...
Considering what you put a lot of them through for the 4 years here.
Well, nobody talks about what they put me through. So I challenge any other 71-year-old. Have you spent more time being tortured by 18-year-olds in your life, or have I spent more time being tortured by 18-year-olds? So I feel like whatever I did to them, they deserved it.
That was so vintage. With all those faces in the crowd, that just reminded me so much of the defensive teams. Sue, Diane, it's
absolutely
33-point mark by victory. I mean, it was such a fun.
No, it was kind of a throwback. We didn't. There were times when we came to this tournament, and we felt like it would be very, very hard for us to lose this tournament because we were just that talented at every position, and we had no holes in our lineup. I certainly didn't feel that way going into the regionals this year, and I certainly didn't feel that way coming here. I knew it could happen, but with those other teams, I was certain it was going to happen. And these guys made it look a lot easier than it is, and wow. I was just, these last two games have really been, wow.
You said that winning a 12th national title wouldn't change your life, but there's a lot of women who are up in that arena with you where their life did change.
Absolutely. And that's what you keep doing this for, because that feeling, that sense of accomplishment, that went away for me a long time ago, because they all run into each other. I don't feel any different. I didn't feel any different after 9 than I did after 8. And I don't feel any different after 10 than I did after 9. So right now, yeah, maybe it's a little different because it's taken so long. But it's like, I wake up tomorrow morning and it's like, yeah, we won a national championship. That's great. I'm really proud of our basketball program and our staff and our support staff. Those kids wake up and go, man, I just reached a dream that I had since I was 5 years old and I first touched the basketball.
Geno, let me ask you a question. I know 50 years ago, John Wooden won his 10th national championship, so I'm trying to bring it back to the fountain of youth here a little bit. 50 years later, you won your 12th national championship. So, and I know you're smiling, and I love it when we talk old school basketball. So here's my question for you. Number one, how do you like being mentioned in the same breath with John Wooden, since you guys are both such iconic coaches, and you've done it so well and produced so many championships that not only did you produce national championships, but you also produce a lot of pro players?
Those two things go together. If you don't produce pro players, you don't win national championships. That's easy one. The thing, comparing us or me to John Wooden, it's apples and oranges, Things were different back then. The NCAA tournament was way different back then. The game of men's basketball is way different than the game of women's basketball. The thing we have in common is we spent a lot of time at one school, and we were fortunate enough to coach the most iconic players that ever played. And and we both like to play golf, so that's great.
To get Caitlin Chen a title.
What's that?
There was a time when this drought would have been unfathomable for UConn. How do you feel like the standard you guys set contributed to the parity that contributed to this drought you guys experienced?
Yeah. I remember when it was they were saying UConn was bad for basketball. Man, it was actually put in the newspaper, UConn is bad for women's basketball. We won 111 games in a row, and we won 4 national championships in a row. We're bad for women's basketball. Then people started to see how bad we were for women's basketball, and they wanted to be as bad as us, right? They wanted to be as good as us, to knock us off our throne, so to speak. So they all got better, and they all invested more money, and they all recruited better, and they all coached better. And we have 5 years where we never had our whole team. So you combine that with they got better, we got worse. And now you have parity. So now everybody jumping up and down about parity. Well, if you love parity, you can't be pissed that we don't win it every year. I mean, it's hard. This stuff is hard. So to come back and win now probably means more than some of those other ones where there maybe were 5, 6, 8 teams in the country every year, but you had to beat them every year in the regionals and the finals. This year, there's just more really good teams that are capable of getting to this point, and I feel like we had a lot to do with that. So, yeah, all those haters out there that hate UConn, keep hating us, and you'll keep getting better.
On Paige, most programs there would be this question of how do you go about replacing a player like Paige. With you guys, a little bit different, right? We talked about the Trinity and how important that was to winning the national championship. You just did that in this way. 2 parts to it. One, how do you figure out how to replace Paige on next year's roster? And just related to it, Paige is going to face some questions to figure out what her next move will be at a time the players are empowered by players you played who played for you.
Yeah.
And how would you advise her about sort of figuring out this next few days?
Well, the next few days, I mean, she's already said, I'm going in a draft.
Right.
So the next few days for her are just her and her agent talking about what's coming next.
Right.
She probably knows who's drafting her unless something happens, something drastic happens. She knows she's going to be playing somewhere in the WNBA next year. Mm-hmm. She knows she's got her hands full because it's not going to be like college, right? And she also knows that there's a whole nother life out there that she hasn't experienced yet. My advice is going to be the exact same thing that I've been saying for the last 4 years, because she's been living the life of a professional basketball player the last 5 years. Because of how NIL has come to women's basketball and other sports, she has a professional basketball's mentality. I get paid a great deal of money, and my body has to be right so I can prove that I deserve that money. I want to win games so that I prove that I am good enough that you should invest in me. So she's been a pro for basically the last 5 years. And so now it's become a job. So now she's going to work. Here, there was still a fun element to this. There was still, a semblance of, innocence to this. Next year, there is none of that. That's all gone. Now it's just professional sports, and that's a whole new world for her. And
just for how do you replace her?
you don't. People say, how do you replace Stewie? We didn't.
Right.
How do you replace any great player that's won a championship? You don't. You hope that you bring in enough good players that do the same things that you need done that Paige did. But you're not replacing Paige. That's not going to happen.
How tight was that hug? How tight was that hug with Paige? Was it D tight? Was it Stewie tight? Maya tight?
Yeah, no. It was a good one. It was a good one. It was Paige being emotional, which she doesn't get very emotional. She does not. But this particular time, she was, and like I said, I just think this is it's hard when it's over. There were emotions, and they were the good emotions. I looked across the way at the South Carolina bench, and there was emotions there too for those kids that finished. And they're the emotions you didn't want to have it in the last game. These were all emotions of joy.
What have you said?
Put Sarah in perspective. Clearly, of course, the free world, but she just turned 19. We talk about age. Just turned 19. Could you just put her in perspective of sort of what she's meant at this point in her career?
It's interesting when we saw her play, and people hate when you compare girls in high school to what they could be in college. And they also probably don't like if you compare a women's player to a men's player, because they say, well, why don't you compare her to a women's player? Well, when I saw Sarah play in high school in 10th grade, I couldn't think of a women's player to compare her to. So I said, she's Charles Barkley. I said, this kid's great on her feet, great hands. She knows the game. She competes. She plays passionately every game. She's a way better shooter than Chuck was. But I just think when when you have a kid who's that young, who knows the game so well,
5 minutes left.
and has the ability that no matter what situation she's in on the court, no matter what part of the court, no matter what it calls for, she has the ability to do it. That's very rare. And professional basketball players, much less a 19-year-old college freshman.
We come in here and
Hold on. You already asked me.
What have you said to Paige? Just those, whether or not it was that hug, or I know you hugged again up on the podium or the stage. Like, what have those little interactions been like?
Just it's funny because they actually were different than the normal ones, because now we're talking about not necessarily, hey, what you have to do to get better, where we're going after this game, what we have to do next year to be better. It was more about how did you feel going into tonight's game? When did you know that this was going to happen? Did you know when it was going to happen? We talked about the scenarios leading up to this game, because last year, leading up to the Iowa game, she had a different mindset. And this year, it was all where it needed to be. And that's maybe why she and AZ played the way they played. They probably should have just had a meeting and said, let's play like Sarah.
When in the past, when you've gone through like the WNBA, your players being drafted, have GMs, coaches reached out to you in the past, and have you talked to the Wings about Paige yet?
No, I have not. Some GMs during the course of these last 20 years will contact me and talk to me about players. Coaches will as well. They'll come to practice. They'll come to games. Struck up a relationship with a bunch of them, and some I couldn't pick them out of a lineup, and they draft my players, and they don't even ask me anything about the kids. So I know that kid won't be there long, so I don't worry about it.
Geno, it's been 3,288 days since you last won a national title. Would you have guessed more? Would you have guessed less? And
we would have won a couple more, but circumstances conspired against us. So it is what it is. That's the only time I look back is when I want to fix whatever mistakes I made. Other than that, a lot of those Final Fours, those championships, losing those didn't bother me that much when we didn't have our full team. If we'd have lost this one with our whole team, that would bother me tremendously.
could you think of a better way for Paige to end her career, not with the national championship, but not being the leading scorer, not being the MVP, as an unselfish kid?
Yeah. If you want to win, you just want to win. You don't care what. She's been MVP of everything she's ever been in. So she doesn't need that. She doesn't need that. And I think that's a great thing for AZ going forward, right? To be able to carry this, into the next thing.
What is this team? This specific team and these players have meant to you? What is this team and these specific players, what are they meant to you?
This particular mean? Nothing more than any other team, except after the South Carolina game at South Carolina, when we got back, they finally started to understand why we're doing what we're doing in practice, and stop looking at me like there was something wrong with me whenever I made them do stuff they didn't feel like doing. And since that day, we've all gotten way closer. They've gotten way closer. Our coaching staff's gotten much closer with the team.
Will you give it a rest already?
So, speaking of shitheads,
Love you.
they asked when was the last time I had that kind of emotion with Paige.
Awesome, buddy.
All right. Yeah, you gonna be around?
Yeah, we're coming.
Okay. All right.
I mentioned that amount of time because during that time you guys have gone to 7 Final Fours, 294-30 run. It would be the period of time that any other program would call a high water mark.
That's right.
And I just wonder, when you sort of think about this time, you said it would have felt like a disappointment if you didn't win this, but does this feel like a validation in ways you didn't expect?
No, nope, not at all. Again, all those years, I just went home and went, they didn't really beat Connecticut. When we show up with our whole team and you beat us, then you beat Connecticut. The rest of the time, you beat a patchwork of Connecticut players. So I was okay with it.
Geno, you go ahead.
You said you felt like the basketball gods are going to bring you this far, to bring you this far. At what point during the journey did you start feeling that way, and did you honestly, like, all of today, you didn't even have like a second of doubt, like, maybe they are going to screw us?
Listen, all day long, all I kept saying is, how am I going to handle getting our ass kicked? How am I going to handle getting our ass kicked? What am I going to say? How am I going to answer these questions? We weren't even the number 1 seed, and everybody's made us the favorite to win the tournament. Now we're going to come in here and we're going to stink. They're going to play great. Then you just beat them by 29. This is all like in my head, right? But then as soon as that goes away, I go, well, it reminds me of, 1995, we're in Minneapolis, okay? We're undefeated, 34-0 at the time. And we're playing Tennessee for a national championship. And we're down 6 at halftime. And I walked in the locker room and I said, this has like been a magical season. This is a fairy tale season. If it was supposed to end, it would have ended by now. The reason we're here is because this is the actual fairy tale. It's going to end that way. And I thought back to that today. The whole Paige thing, we haven't won in a long time, blah, 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 blah. I thought, come on. They wouldn't put us through this. But then I go, man, we're going to suck tonight. So, yeah, that's my all day long. And I just go lay down, close my eyes, and I hope it goes away.